Welcome back, everyone, to the eCoreAcademy e-learning platform today. My name is AJay Raj, back with yet another anatomy and physiology video for you all. And today we're going to be starting a new system. So after moving from the integumentary system and looking at the skeletal system, as well as the cardiovascular system, let's start to move into the lymphatic system. So what I'll be covering is the lymphatic system overview will be basically an introduction to what we'll be covering overall in our lymphatic system unit, our new section. And then afterwards, we're going to be transitioning into other subjects and courses in anatomy and physiology, of course, other subjective courses, sorry. And that will include excretory system, the excretory system, which is the process in which you clear out your body, and that's through urination. That whole body, how the whole body, how it's purposed towards actually excreting waste and waste material and products to actually help you survive. And then, of course, we're going to be looking at the skeletal system in more depth, closing off the integumentary system as well, and then we'll introduce more topics such as the muscular system, and of course we'll also include other systems that correlate with this that are more generic, such as your immune system, your circulatory system, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to be looking at the lymphatic system, one of my personal favorites. I did compete with this at the Science Olympiad Anatomy and Physiology competition. And I had a blast doing it. This was one of my systems that was assigned to me, and I hope you guys enjoy. These are from my notes, but then I've actually toned them up to actually teach you guys. So it's not just in my interpretation of what I think those notes should be put in. It's more of a professional standpoint and more of a teaching standpoint, so all of you guys can really understand this. This can be a much more enjoyable experience where you actually get to learn and not just have to scribble down notes. So I hope this is really fun, and I hope you guys enjoy. So we're going to be looking at the lymphatic system in this overview, or introduction to it, and we're going to be looking at its basic structures and functions. We're not going to be getting into too much depth with them. I'm just going to be introducing some structures that you guys should familiarize yourself with, and then we'll get into the more of the complexity later on. We're going to look at the lymphatic system itself as an overall product of the body. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So lymphatics part 1. Let's look at the overall overview. What is the purpose? What is its functions? And then we'll get into the structures later. So components of the lymphatic system. It's a network of tissues, organs, and vessels. Now, tissues, organs, and vessels, that's basically what makes up the entirety of the body from a small standpoint to a larger standpoint. Of course, you're going to have your cellular composition as basically your lymphs, what makes up these lymphatic structures, cells. You're going to have those structures, but that's common throughout the body. They're animal cells. And then you're going to build up to these collections of these cells, the tissues, these smaller organs, and then, of course, fluids that goes along with tissues and the breaking down of tissues. And then you're going to have vessels that actually transport this throughout the entirety of the body. And, of course, you're also going to have those organs in the body that actually produce these fluids and actually process in the lymphatic system. So let's look at the function. So the function of the lymphatic system is when it utilizes its different structures to work together to help maintain fluid balance in the body. So we know that the body actually intakes, lets go of, and actually retains a lot of basically congestive fluids that basically counteract with each other, and some fluids that need clearing, some fluids that need to be altered after they're consumed, and some fluids that actually need to be altered in gaseous form after they're actually excreted or let loose in the bathroom. And also, this lymphatic system is very important with that fluid balance to actually help protect it from pathogens in the body. And it also does have immune system immunity cells that actually do actively participate in the immune system. So this is technically a subset of the immune system itself. And these pathogens include bacterium, viruses, and microorganisms. Don't worry about that. We'll get into that a bit later. We're going to have these entirely new unit on basically the immunization of cells in the lymphatic system all throughout the body. And then some basic structures that you guys are going to want to know are the, starting off with our tissues, our fluid, and our cells. We have lymph, which is a fluid, lymphatic vessels, which actually transports. These are types of vessels throughout the body. Lymph nodes, which are basically your miniature organs that process only to the lymphatic system. Then you have the spleen, thymus, tonsils, and lymphatic ducts that are all organs in the body that actually help assist in this process. So if we look at this process here, we know that we have basic tissues here. And I want to break apart what tissues, organs, and vessels, like I've stated here, actually mean. What do they mean? So tissues, organs, and vessels, they're going in sequence of movements. So you start from tissues, and then you have these organs that contain these vessels. So it's going from tissues, vessels, to organs. So tissues are basically composed of cells. Composed of cells. Cellular composition. Just breaking down that term. And then we have, let's do vessels. Vessels are lined with tissues. With tissue. Let's say tissue. So the difference between why the fact that I said tissue and tissues here is because when I'm referring to tissues here, tissues is referring to a specific type of tissue that's found in each and every separate organ. Meaning one organ is going to have, say we're in the kidney, it's going to have a kidney tissue. And the two kidneys do not have the same exact type of tissue. So every single separate organ that you see that is existent with space between another one, it's going to have its own type of tissue. And therefore, a vessel is technically considered to have its own tissue, even though it's considered a microorgan. And it's lined with tissue, and it's also transports fluids, so transport. That's very important. You know what the funny thing is, the lymphatic system isn't very complicated, actually. With the basics, if you have a strong foundation, it's going to be very strong. Foundation is very large in this topic, but once you have the foundation, everything else really starts to click. But when I'm trying to get down to one structure that I really want you guys to think about, like say, for example, the cardiovascular system, it's the heart, it's an organ. However, the one main mother structure of this whole entire system would have to be the lymph, the fluid. It influences everything because it's about fluid balance here. And of course, lymph is our main fluid here. So that's fluid balance. Really trying to emphasize that, and lymph. Okay. And then we have organs, also lined with tissue. And what they are participating in is active effect. They have an active effect. That should be an A. So they have an active effect with actual lymph, and they're actually affected by lymph itself. They affect lymph, and they are affected by lymph, in which they drain out the organs and properly maintain homeostasis, which I will get into later in this lesson. Very important. It's balance, fluid balance of the body. Lymphatics part 2, overview continued. So the continuing with what the actual overview of the lymphatic system is. The lymphatic system is thought of as a necessary accessory of the immune system. Like I said, it's a part of the immune system. It's a subsection of it. And the circulatory system as well, which is basically with your lungs, your breathing. When you, it's the oxygenation of the entire body, how you intake oxygen and then also excrete it out, and also let go of those gaseous forms such as carbon dioxide that are not necessary to retain in the body. But the immune system and the circulatory system, such as the lungs, which need to be drained, and the immune system, which have different organs, the lymphatic system helps drain all of those, and it plays a role in both equally. So it also helps the circulatory system do its job because it's directly linked with it, with the lungs and the oxygenation. There's a lot of fluid in your lungs. Also, there's a certain amount of fluid in the lungs, but it also has to do with drainage in the same manner as you're draining in a gaseous form. And the main liquids include the derived form from the plasma in blood. So that's really important. So blood plasma is actually what develops blood itself, but that's also where lymph and white blood cells, such as red blood cells, as well as red blood cells, are all derived from. And that's where lymph really starts to branch off from the from all these different systems. It's a minor system of all combining to a major system. And specifically lymphocytes, macrophages, and monocytes, which I'll get into later. The lymph travels in only one direction, and it does not circulate. So basically, if you were to think of yourself as a clock only moves from in a clockwise direction. It does not move anti-clockwise. Although anti-clockwise is a defined direction A clock does not move in that manner. It always moves in one continuous direction. And say, for example, you think of your left hand as a standpoint. What's going to happen is, like a clock throughout your whole body, the lymph is going to start to travel up your arm, all across through the head, and all the way across through to your right leg, to your left leg, and all the way back to that same hand. It's going to be moving that same manner, and that's what really judges the whole construction of our whole body. That's why the bladder is in places as it should be. The shoulders are in certain connections. It's very complex, but I will get into that. Don't worry. This is just an overview, so don't get stressed. Just trying to throw it at you so that you guys can kind of absorb it, get those questions and that those confusions. I want them so that next video I can really start to pick away at them. So let's look at lymph, the mother structure of the lymphatic system. So the lymph function in the body is what we're going to be focusing on. So lymph is a clear, watery fluid found throughout the body system, and it travels in one specific direction. So think about it going in a clockwise direction, and it does not circulate, meaning that it does not go this has to do with its vessels and its vascularity, meaning your vessels are not going to be transporting this lymph in opposing ways. So these lymph vessels are not going to be contradictory. They're going to be going the same direction, going in the same manner. But this antagonistic pair has to be created, meaning there has to be objects going against each other in order to maintain, that equality and that homeostasis. And that's where it actually contradicts against blood to maintain that fluid balance. And it also carries proteins, so that's its homeostatic process. It carries proteins, and composition is similar to that of blood plasma. So if you think of red blood cells, they have to transport oxygen. In this case, the lymphocytes actually have to transport proteins. And its composition can vary due to the specific organ a lymph will drain out of, meaning it has a lot of alteration depending on where it is consistent. Remember, it doesn't circulate. So it's always going to be revisiting the same parts of the body. So it leaves lymphocytes there, and then it continues its path and transport with its common lymphocytes, and specialized lymphocytes will be left in certain organs. And then the body, this is a really cool fact. The body transports 125 milliliters of lymph an hour. So if you think about it, if you took that out, into a little cup and you took a liter cup, that's literally almost an eighth of that entire cup. That's just about an eighth of that entire cup. And that an eighth of that entire cup in 1 entire hour. And that's just random fluid in the body that's being transported. And it's like liquid gold for the body. And it's 2,500 to 2,800 milliliters per day. So that's 2.5 to 2.8 liters a day. And half of it is from the liver and small intestine. And this has to do with what I wanted to bring up basically as a subsection, a little minor point on the side, is that drinking, actually consuming any form of harmful like alcohol, will really stressing out your liver, because when they stress out your liver, your lymphatic system is compromised, and it's going to have to work 10 times harder, and that's going to spoil your liver and damage that tissue on the interior of that organ lining it. So it's not very helpful. And it carries fewer proteins than blood plasma, but it has enough to produce specific type of blood cells, and that's part of its immunization in the body, how it gets rid of these foreign bacteria and pathogens. So what I really want to emphasize here is lymph basically is in your given organ. So let's say that this blob here represents an organ. Let's say that this represents our appendix. It's kind of what it looks like, a bit more stretched out, but yeah, you get the basic idea. What's going to happen is you're going to have an opening way in this given appendix. It's not going to be visible like that. It's going to be a micro opening, and lymph is going to travel through it. What it's going to do is it's going to carry proteins, these proteins. Let's say that these are proteins. When it carries these proteins inside, what's going to happen is the appendix is going to utilize that. The appendix does not need much. That's why it composes itself of lymph, because it's not actually utilized in the body as much as you think. It's an involuntary organ, meaning, it's a voluntary organ, meaning you can actually control it, and you can take it out. So it's not necessary for survival for the human body, and you can utilize it without any other extensive machines. And after that, the lymph is going to travel through. A process is going to happen here. I'll tell you, it's called specialization. This is the process of specialization. And when it comes out, what's going to happen is it's going to basically drain unnecessary fluid. And it's going to drain fluid, and this is what you don't want, the bad stuff. And how that basically excretes, it's going to excrete, through the skin, through the pores, when you're exhaling with the circulatory system, pumping bad blood out, nosebleeds, and also your excretory system, getting rid of it down there in the bathroom. So it's going to go to your lymph vessels. This is going to travel to your larger lymph vessels. And capillaries are going to function here. So lymph vessels. All right. So I'm going to be showing you a diagram of the lymphatic organs, and these are all the organs that produce lymph and also participate with lymph. So lymph vessels are your basic structures here. These are your lymph vessels, and they actually transport lymph. And then you have your lymph nodes, which are basically specialized organs. They're very small organs, and they actually help with proteins and organ support, basically. And what these proteins do is actually help with immunization as well. It helps with detection of these immunization cells so that the immune system, with its white blood cells, antibodies, and all these different immunizing cells can kick in and actually eliminate what the threat is. And then, of course, you have the tonsils, which are basically located in the throat area. A lot of people actually have tonsil issues. Some people have tonsil issues. They get them removed. But this helps with your immune system and drainage in the body. Oftentimes, you'll get head colds if your tonsils are inflamed as such. Same thing with your lymph nodes, actually. You have lymph nodes out here near your tonsils. And if you feel around there, that's a good sign that it's a fever. And, of course, right now in this time during this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, that's not a good sign. So that's an easy detection. Tonsils, they're helping with drainage in head, which is very important because the brain is located there. And the thymus is probably the most important functional organ. I don't want to get into it too much, but all I want to say is that it's not existent in all of people's bodies, meaning that if you're a child, you're going to have this, meaning around 12 years old, that thymus actually starts to turn into a piece of fat. And this has to do with your thyroid system. So it conducts with the thyroid system. And I'll show you how the thyroid system actually participates with this. And of course, the spleen helps with filtration. And then, of course, bone marrow, very important. Has to do with, blood and blood plasma, same derivative. You're going to have, from the same origin, deriving from the same origin. The bone marrow is going to be very important in producing this lymph. Don't worry, we're going to go through each and every single one of these. So excited to actually introduce this, but don't worry, we're going to take this step by step and keep this organized. You know what I'm saying? Now let's look at lymph tissue. So lymph tissue function in the body. Lymph tissue is a specific type of tissue. Like I said before, tissue is basically your step up after lymph, and a specific tissue that is found in the lymphatic system that helps keep the body safe from prone infection, meaning it has immunization properties, that is, as it is part of the immune system, and it's developed by the lymph liquid itself and plays a role in draining out unwanted pathogens, fluids, and waste materials as well. And it develops T and B cells. T and B cells are basically those protein cells, those protein indicating cells, meaning they indicate certain parts of the body that need certain products. They also help with that drainage as well. Lymphoid tissue plays an important role of immunity in the lymphatic system by absorbing and emptying out fluids in the body, and it forms a diffusible surveillance system throughout all systems and organs of the body, having an immediate reaction and pasteurization, meaning it's going to react to that, and then it's going to take a step forward in actually handling that issue. So it's going to participate in immune system, immune detection. I'll write this here. Immune detection. Just to easily summarize this for you guys, immune detection, let's say it's also going to help in drainage, overall drainage, although it does have to incorporate the lymph vessels as well. It does not have that pump itself. And then 3, It's going to also have immune reaction, but it's also going to have development, meaning development and pasteurization. It incubates these young proteins to actually do their job, pasteurization. And in the anatomy and physiology test itself, they're going to look through and they're going to go into specifics about the organs and how they actually conduct each other. And they're going to look through lymph capillaries, these different capillaries, how its reaction to blood is very important. That's basically what they're going to focus on. They basically ignore a lot of this other stuff. And they only focus on its correlation with blood. So that's why I'm going to say tune into probably my next video. I will be making capillaries. Really tune into that. That's probably going to be all you need on those tiebreaker questions, those hard questions there. All about lymph capillaries and a lot of diagrams. Lymphatic system is all about those diagrams and all about these numbers and calculations, such as knowing your facts about how much the body produces each hour through lymph, how much it drains, so on and so forth. And also these, medical responses to these diseases, how to drain the body. What are some chiropractic methods? So lymph capillary function in the body, like I said, this is a very important part of the lymphatic system, one that they really extensively focus on the test. Don't know why, but they have a knack for doing so. But I will go in depth with this next video. I just want to get you guys introduced to this. So lymph capillaries, these are tiny, thin-walled structures that are found in even spaces between cells, hint, red blood cells, white blood cells, cardiovascular system. And they drain extracellular fluid from the lumen of the cell, or lymph. Lumen of the cell is basically a organelle of the cell. It's a location for an organelle of the cell near the nucleus. And it originates in the lymph tissues as smaller, tiny sacs with a creamy white coating, and it has a protective endothelial wall, like the layer that encompasses blood capillaries. So you might be wondering, what does that mean? So it's a lymph tissue it originates in your lymph tissues, what lines these other organs and these other vessels. And they're tiny sacs with these creamy white coatings that basically hold lymph in them. And they release these lymph into the bloodstream and also into separate organs themselves. Bloodstream does that as well. And when it does that, it's going to have an immediate response, meaning it's going to have all the items that's needed within lymph. There's different types of lymph, and it's going to combine those. Basically, like, you're trying to cook a perfect meal for a certain person. You're going to take those materials, and those materials are always going to be existent in the body under the lymphatic system. You're going to put them into the oven, and you're going to combine them, mesh them in some sort of way that appeals to that specific person. Likewise, it's going to appeal to that specifically given tissue. And it has a protective endothelial wall. All that means is it has an extra layer an extra basically coating of skin to protect itself. And it allows liquid solvents, large solids, and whole cells to pass through it, deoxidizing the bad oxygen. So all I want to note here is all of these items I'll go over later in the course. But large solids, solvents, these are all particles that are going through this lymph tissue, and this basically helps filter it out too. So if you're going to have this, maybe let's zoom in on the skin of this. So let's pretend that this is a zoomed in part of the skin, and let's assume that these are little pores. What's going to happen is, depending on what the cell needs, you're going to have these larger particles and these smaller particles. Depending on what's needed, these larger particles are going to be of less necessity. Let's say that this is potassium, and this is sodium. The body needs more sodium and less potassium. And if there's too much potassium entering in, those pores will close up to only allow sodium particles in. And these potassium particles will just be deflected out. And that's the whole process with the lymph tissue, and I'll get into that in my next video. Lymph capillaries part 2. Let's look at a interaction with blood. This is a very important diagram. So make sure you guys put this on your little cheat sheet that you get to have during your test. They're very important. Don't make it small. Don't compromise space. Make it large enough, and really study really study all of its major parts. So here we have the interaction with blood. All I want you guys to look at is the correlation here. So we have these lymphatic vessels that are transporting lymph, and it's going to be antagonistic pairs. So remember, lymph always travels in one direction. They're going to travel in the opposite direction of blood. So we have the arterioles, the venules of blood, and we have the blood capillary. And then we have these lymph capillaries that are attaching around these blood capillaries and these lymphatic vessels. what's going to be formed there is interstitial fluid, and that's the liquid gold for the body. It's a form of lymph fluid that's basically going to be any organ's dream. So the lymphatic system structure. Basically, what we're going to be doing, lymphatic system course structure, I'm going to be showing you what we're going to be doing in the next few videos for this course. So we have the larger, for this system. So we're going to be looking at the larger structures of the lymphatic system, hint, hint, your lymphatic capillaries. And then we're going to be looking at the interactions between those structures and their structural interactions with other systems, such as the cardiovascular system, as I showed you in the previous slide. And then we're going to look at the molecular composition of lymph under a microscope. I'll be showing you images and other related cells and tissues. Look at diseases of the system. There's a lot of really insane diseases with this system, with drainage, when drainage just goes wrong, and it affects a lot of the other systems. So we'll go through that as well, and organs involved in the process, such as the thymus, things like that. And we'll have the enzyme interactions and blood interactions. Enzyme interactions is going to be very short. Probably I'll combine it with another lesson as well. And then we're going to have compositional drainage and homeostasis. So what are the most important ones that you're going to need for Science Olympiad? Or just in general, what are the most important? We're going to look at this one, this guy right here, larger structures of the system. And that's basically going to emphasize on the diseases of the system as well. Basically, organs involved in this process is going to be under the topic of larger structures. And then, of course, we're going to have this guy right here, blood interactions. And that's going to basically summarize homeostasis as well. So those are the three main most important ones that you're going to need in competition. But then again, don't neglect every one of these. They might incorporate a little bit of something. So always be prepared so that you guys can shine and come up on top. All right, once again, everyone, that'll be it for today's video. This has been the eCoreAcademy e-learning platform. Please make sure to like and subscribe, hit that post notification bell so you don't miss out, and feel free to leave a comment down below. It's very greatly appreciated. We take your feedback very seriously. We will try and implement them the best that we can in our upcoming videos. Also, visit our website at www.ecoreacademy.org. See what kind of interesting content we have there. We have integrated note sheets, quizzes, and worksheets to go along with each and every single one of these videos to better help you. Feel free to contact us at eCoreAcademy@gmail.com if you have any questions or if you just want to reach out. And finally, visit our socials in the description box below. We have the full link down there for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See what kind of interesting content we have there and use those mediums to share all of our videos. Once again, everyone, that'll be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been AJ, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.